So, hi everybody, my name is Luke and I'm the Deputy President for TU Dublin Students' Union in Blanchardstown. This series is to encourage students to run for elections and bridge that political gap between students and the wider politics. Throughout this series, we'll be joined by multiple progressive community leaders and exploring topics such as minorities in leadership, why bother running, and then also learning a little bit more about our guests in each session. Today, I am joined by the spokesperson for Education for Social Democrats, Gary Gannon. And for the benefit of our students watching, would you mind telling us just a little bit about yourself? So who you are and what you do, Gary?
Hey, my name is Gary Gannon. I'm a TD representing the constituency of Dublin Central, and I'm a member of the Social Democrats Party.
Great. And I suppose kind of following on from that, why do you do what you do? That's such an extremely important topic. And if go on.
I don't know. I don't know why I do it. I don't know how I got into it or how I get out of it. I really love it. I love politics. I've always been somebody who believed in kind of activism and standing up, and even sometimes it's terrifying to hear your own voice being echoed in a room. You still have to do it anyway, and I've always really enjoyed that. I've been in politics since 2014 was my first council election. I was elected as an independent in the north inner city, and do you know what? If you're asking me now what motivated you to run that election, I still can't even remember what was actually the moment. Like I was very lucky. I got let go from my apprenticeship in 2007. Ended up getting an access program in Trinity, studying politics. Never thought I was going to even go into electoral politics. I was working when I graduated in 2012. I got a job in a community centre doing maternity cover, and that was finishing around kind of mid 2013. And then all of a sudden there was a local election on, and then there was me, my mum, my brother. And I was being interested in politics at that point because I studied politics. People in town kept saying, "Oh, you're going to do politics." So when the local election came up and I didn't have a job, I remember knocking at doors with my ma and my brother, and everyone in the inner city seemed to vote for me because they knew my ma. So I think I got elected as my ma's proxy onto the city council, and I've loved the experience. I love standing up for my community. I've always just, coming from the north in the city, there's always been a lot to fight back for, and let's just keep progressing that in terms of like it was an independent. Then I didn't really want to be an independent anymore from being involved in the marriage equality referendum, knocking at doors alongside kind of people who I had shared beliefs with and kind of talking about the Ireland that I wanted to live in kind of made me not want to get back into that little shell of just being myself as a politician alone. So that got me into a party, which got me into general election politics. And now I'm sitting here in the convention centre talking to you in between, like, legislating for mandatory quarantine in hotels. So like,
that's
a
really
random
cool.
thing. Yeah.
That's really, really cool. And I suppose even the fact that you're sitting in the convention centre, is there anything kind of, maybe do you want to share maybe like one or two accomplishments with us that even for students that like maybe you'd be like really, really proud of over your time within politics?
Oh, within politics, I was going to tell you about the football competition I won when I was 12. In politics, look, there's a number of accomplishments I'm really happy about, but some of your listeners or some of the people who are involved might be familiar with the Constitution Hill down in town. It's just beside the Grange Gorman campus of TU, I think. And there's a playground in Constitution Hill there at the minute. And what people won't know about that playground when they see it is it was actually the quickest playground to go from design to completion in the history of the state. And that happened because the kids in Constitution Hill, when the Lewis was getting built and going through, decided that actually they weren't going to live in a concrete jungle anymore. And they were going to stop the Lewis going through because they were trying to block off their flats. And they had even less places to play. And they were going to block off that Lewis, and the Dublin City Council built them a playground. And I never forget like seeing a bunch of kind of teenagers who had the privilege of standing alongside saying, like, blocking up the Lewis, then negotiating with the NTA and with Dublin City Council, getting funding for their playground, seeing the designs, picking out what sort of swings they wanted and what slides they wanted, and then seeing that playground completed in a rapid space of time. Whatever else I achieve in politics, every time I jog past there, I just get a big stupid smile just thinking like what a great experience that was. And then there are other things that are not completed yet. there's a Magdalen Laundry in Sean McDermott Street in my constituency, which people wanted to turn into a Japanese hotel group, and managed to be involved in the campaign with survivors of institutional abuse, with some great activists talking about how we'd reimagine that site as a site of conscience. And we haven't delivered upon that yet, but I stopped the sell off of it and came back with loads of great plans. I've now got to a point where people like Leo Varadkar has talked about the fact that that needs to be kind of a site of conscience, if not there, somewhere else. The Minister for Children, Roderick O'Gorman, has now accepted that we need to have a centre where people can touch the walls and know that those horrific abuses happened, and that just might be the site. So I'm proud that I managed to stop the sell-off of that site and stop being complicit in the further cover-up of that part of our history, and still have a sense of purpose about what we can deliver there. But they're one kind of relatively small thing and one massive thing that I'm really proud of in my time in politics.
No, and that's so impressive. And I'm after learning something about Grange Gorman that I never knew before. So that's pretty cool.
It's not on the Grange Gorman campus, it's on the Constitution Hill flat just behind it.
No, 100%. And then I suppose, like, I think it's really, really important then kind of focusing in on that then, kind of the importance of running for those leadership roles so you can make those changes. There are so many barriers for people, as there's a perception that kind of politics, be that student politics or otherwise, that it's kind of like an upper class game. Only that as long as you have money, that's all that matters, or to get elected, or if you're the coolest person in the game, that's all that matters. Have you ever encountered any of those barriers? Because they're obviously not true. And why do you think it's important to run for these leadership roles, to break down those barriers and break those stereotypes?
What do you mean, Luke? I like to consider myself the coolest person in the game. I'm only joking. I'm absolutely not. I'm horrific. Look, I don't come from any sort of political background at all. My earliest political memories were being on with my mum and dad, kind of marching around the inner city against the fact that against, like, involved in the concerns against drugs movements, and that was my earliest kind of political ground, and it's one of my only political kind of involvements kind of before I really got involved. But our voice and the voice that we represent, the voices of people who traditionally wouldn't have stand up and stood for leadership, it's absolutely vitally important. I mean, I look around that. I went to Trinity. I had the privilege of going to Trinity. I shouldn't use privilege and Trinity in the same sentence. But one of the people that really inspired me was like Lynn Rowan. And like Lynn was actually, she was the SU president after I'd already been to Trinity. Like, I think I was graduating all at that stage. But like, just because I seen what privilege looked like in that really kind of elite institution where there's lots of great people as well. But seeing someone like Lynn coming through kind of just even inspired me after the fact. And I know, like, that idea that you cannot be it if you cannot see it. For too many of us, leadership roles weren't open to us because kind of our families and their parents and their parents were always excluded from them. But, this is a different Ireland now. It's more progressive, it's more open. And I think there's been people who have knocked down walls for me and kind of for other people to show them the way. And I think that's the role of a lot of us now who've seen and witnessed great leadership and now want to kind of immerse ourselves in those processes too, is to hold up the same torch for others coming behind us that others have held up for us, and that's really, really important. If you think something isn't for you, I think you really need to explore the way that may be. And it's because a load of kind of people in the past, a load of gobshites have built barriers around themselves, well then that's even more important that we take them away from them. So absolutely, if people are thinking about engaging in electoral office at any level, student union, local council, Dáil, anything, I think you need to imagine not only yourself in those positions, but who you'll inspire after you. Like, that's really, really, really important. Like, go in there for a reason. Don't just go in there because you believe you're the coolest person in the game or any shit like that. It's go in there because actually you know that you're going to make somebody else's pathway a little bit easier.
No, that's absolutely so true. I know myself, I'm a big believer of if you can dream it, you can do it, and if you don't see yourself there, then you're destined to be it, and you're destined to be that change maker. But no, thank you so much for that. And can I ask, actually, has there been any work that either, obviously yourself, I know you covered that, but even your colleagues have done to ensure that we kind of really tackle those barriers, particularly around like the whole esteem of that, working class people can't be, getting into politics or student leadership, because that is a perception. And again, that kind of cool element as well to it, because some of those people make the greatest leaders. Some of those people are the greatest leaders.
Yeah, so but some of those people are already leaders, you know that way. Like so I look at my ma, for example. My ma couldn't read and write until she was in her 30s, and around the north in her city, you know, like she was a street trader. She raised 4 sons in a very difficult area. Like she had a group of mates who were all kind of women leaders in their own kind of area. Nobody ever really defined them like that at the time. But you know, nowadays still that same kind of group of people. She still runs the creche down in Sheriff Street and things like that. And and you know, and all those people down there are just making massive contributions to their community already in leadership roles. So it's people like that who we never really gave the tagline leader to, who made such huge contributions. They still kind of inspire me every day. Like, and even like I worked in education out. I worked at the Trinity Access program after I finished college, doing education outreach programs in kind of day schools. And you'd walk into a school and you'd be teaching fifth years, you'd be teaching a fifth year class, something about college or whatever I was doing. And then you'd hear the story of the kids you're teaching who had to get up that morning and make sure their little brother and sister had breakfast and walk them to school before they came to school themselves. And you're just thinking, oh, like, my blessings, like that's like that kid is like 16, and the responsibility that he or she is already taken on is like just incredible. And it's like kind of, it's not only about kind of taking the tag of leaders, it's about seeing leadership where it exists already that we don't really appreciate. And that's all around the type of environments that you were talking about there. And then it's when we do break down those barriers, be it getting into university, colleges, workplaces, it's about accepting the fact that sometimes these fucking places are terrifying. But you know what? Keep pushing that envelope out and keep holding up the torch, because you know that you're going to make that process a little bit easier for people coming after you. That's so important.
No, I 100% agree. I think that is like golden advice there. And then I kind of suppose like then we've so many other issues facing us, even as we come down the road, like even for future generations, such as the ongoing climate crisis. And I think it's important to call it that because we're standing on the precipice of a catastrophe about to happen, you know, such as, you know, the desire for a greener tomorrow. Being a leader yourself, how do you think that our generation of future leaders can make that difference in tackling the climate change issue, even from a student union perspective?
First, recognize where the problem emanated from. The problem emanated from people only thinking about themselves as individuals. You know, be that big companies, these big Goliaths that have destroyed their environment. We're only ever thinking about that. Only ever thinking about they in their own generation. Never ever saw themselves as part of a continuum of that which might come after them. And I suppose what generation under myself, like your own generation, and even younger now, is doing is they have saw themselves as people who not only inherit the earth but will pass it on. And I think that's been something that's really remarkable. It's kind of a collectivist voice which is being brought back in. You know, kind of, I'm 34 now, and even kind of me, even when I was kind of getting politically involved, the idea of kind of seeing yourself as part of a collective was almost being perceived as naive. And I think generations, my own, actually lots of generations have broke that down a little bit, but the generation below me now, they only ever really see themselves as being part of a collective. You know, they want to be sympathetic towards their friends and the choices they make about their bodies and who they are and all that, and they want to be sympathetic towards the generation that comes after them, and they want to be sympathetic about the world they leave behind. And I think ensuring that, and we committing ourselves and constantly committing ourselves to not replicating the mistakes of the past, I think that's really, really important. And I think I think the generation that's coming up, if they can always see themselves as part of a collective and a continuum, and they not leaving any kind of negative traits, I don't think we'll go too far wrong.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. And then I suppose we're almost coming to the end of our chat, but I just kind of want to ask you to touch on why, if you could talk to the students directly, and if they asked you, why bother running at all? And why be the change maker, and why be a leader? What would you say to them?
Look, if you're thinking about the contribution you can make and you're feeling terrified, good. Leadership should be terrifying. Like it absolutely should. Like I spoken to Dahl yesterday, and like I still have, like I'm 6 or 7 years into my political journey now. And speaking in the Dahl yesterday on the Mother and Baby Homes Commission, I was still bricking myself. Like, but you know what? You're gonna have to feel that fear and do it anyway. For a stupid cliche, but it's important. And then also, if you can imagine yourself in that leadership role, but you're still a little bit reluctant because you think you might get that tap on the shoulder and told you don't belong here. Imagine some other asshole in it who holds a completely different kind of opposing view to you, and then just think about taking the power from them. because that's essentially what will happen. If you don't do it and you believe you have all the capacity and skills to do it, imagine yourself being led by somebody lesser or somebody who's going to make decisions in a manner that are representing a kind of a view or an interest who you may feel might be detrimental to a cohort of people who you value. Like, just if you can't see yourself in that position, imagine the person you don't want to be there, and then challenge them. And that might even be something that you're imagining in your mind. And if you have to create that, so be it.
Yeah, no, that's actually really cool advice. And then I suppose to kind of finish up on kind of our last kind of question then, what advice would you give to the people who are both obviously consider running and then people who've actually already put their name forward and they're on the ballot and they're just waiting for the nominations to close, and they're having that all anxiety build up and they're ready to go at it? What advice would you give to them?
Enjoy it. Like, honestly, just enjoy it. Like, I fully know that sense of anxiety that you're going to experience there, and you're going to see your own face on a ballot paper, and like, it's terrifying. But it can also be really, really lovely. Don't take swipes at each other. Don't try be malicious towards somebody else who's on the ballot sheet for you. Because, you know, my first election was kind of like that, where I ran and I was angry. And, you know, I didn't enjoy it as much as every other election I've had since then, where actually you just recognise that it's a privilege to put yourself forward for those positions. You know, there's going to be people, be it hundreds, dozens, or even a few, who are going to go out and say that they'd like you to represent them. And I think, like, having conversations about the world you want to be living in, and that world, be it your own college or someplace other than that, it's quite a nice experience. So just enjoy it. And like, if you're nervous, good, be nervous, but also step aside and be a little bit proud too, because that's important.
That's absolutely wonderful. Which actually brings us to the end of our little tea time chat. I just want to say thank you so much for being a part of this, and I'm 100% sure that our students, whoever are watching this, will 100% find this really, really helpful. And just before I let you off, is there any kind of social medias that you want to plug, or kind of anything like that where people can find you or find out more information about your party or anything like that?
I'm on all of the social medias with the exception of TikTok. You won't let me on. No, they're too old. Yeah, I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I think it's all Gary Gannon TD. Yeah.
Perfect. That's absolutely wonderful. Gary, thank you so much for joining us for a little election tea time chat. We hope that whoever's running or whoever's considering running will find this really, really helpful and motivational. I know I certainly did. And with that, I am going to say goodbye to everybody.
Cheers. Good luck.